Okay, I want somebody to give me in your own words, without looking at the definition I gave you the other day by John Kabat-Zinn, how would you define, as far as we know to this point, and not in a textbook definition, but your own definition, mindfulness? What does it mean? What is mindfulness? Being present, in other words, having our conscious awareness focusing on what is present right now. Who do you think, of all the people, all the groups of people in the world, who do you think's our best model of a mindful person? He certainly was the one who kind of, his writings were very, very mindful, for sure. There's a group of people that are this way naturally, not all, but most of the time. Don't think quite so hard. It's an answer, it's easier than which. You all were one once. Kids, right? Do you ever see a kid go, oh, I'm going to have to jump on the trampoline in an hour. Oh, and then I'm going to have to eat some food. Then I'll be playing with some friends, but I know they're just going to be mean to me. You know, I'm talking about little kids, not 8, 10, 12, 14-year-olds. I'm talking about 5-year-olds. This is why I think it's not a long jump for us to get to being mindful, because we've all been there on a constant basis at some point in our lives. This is a quote from Gerald Jampolsky, who wrote Love is Letting Go of Fear. He said, and just get the essence of this, because it captures it really nicely. He said, I've often thought that we have much to learn from infants. They have not yet adapted to the concept of linear time with a past, present, and future. They relate only to the immediate present, to right now. As we become older, we tend to accept the adult values which emphasize projecting past learning into the present and anticipated future. It is difficult for most of us to have even the slightest question about the validity of our past, present, future concepts. We believe, tune into this, watch this, and see if this is accurate. We believe the past will continue to repeat itself into the present and future without the possibility of change. Consequently, let me ask you guys, if that's the case, if the past is going to inevitably turn into the future, what's the predominant emotion that's going to be in our present if the future is going to be quite like the past for most people? There's one. Yeah, I can think fear. I mean, if you watch TV enough, if the future is going to be like the past, and you watch TV, especially, I mean, this week, holy cow, it's like this insane thing that's going on with the Senate and the Supreme Court. My gosh. And I'm not going to go into that too much, but the whole thing is, man, all these bad decisions. If this guy gets on the Supreme Court, then he'll make all kinds of bad decisions down the road that will affect us for the next 50 years. And we're freaking out. And that's what we're exposed to day after day after day. I find that when I turn the TV off and turn the radio off and I go outside, it's a nice day. And I find that that's the case, that's been the case. I'm in my late 50s. It keeps being that way, that when I go outside, it's a nice day. But if we listen to other people and they tell us, well, here's how you should feel. You should feel afraid that this is going to happen. And they've been saying that to me for as long as, 35 years of somebody telling me, bad things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen. And sometimes things get a little tricky. But I keep going outside going, man, it's a nice day. I think it was the Master, Jesus Christ, who said, except ye become as a little child, how does that end? Except ye become as a little child. And I don't think this is anything particularly religious. I think this is a spiritual principle. A mind, body, spirit principle. Except ye become as a little child. How does that end? You cannot enter into the kingdom of God. And I think in one way of interpreting that is, if you want to be really happy, kingdom of God, happy, peaceful, be like the child. Not childish, but like a child. And how's a child? He's mindful. Most, not all, but most of the time. He shows up and goes, wow, this is what I get right now. Instead of, oh, it's going to be awful in 2 weeks. They're projecting that this guy, if he gets on the Supreme Court, they're worried about decisions he's going to make in 50 years. I'm not kidding. I heard somebody on one of the news channels, he said, if this guy gets on the court 50 years from now, this is the decision he's going to make. Oh, man, we got 50 years to be afraid of a decision that somebody's going to make that's going to horribly impact our lives. How insane is that? And I say that without judgment about who said that. That thought of worrying about something that's going to happen in 50 years is insane. It's totally insane. You can't be there in 50 years now, and if all you have is now. And if you have a choice between, okay, I'm going to worry about 50 years from now, or enjoy what's now, that's not a hard decision when you realize how great now is. And how great can always be. And we're starting to sense that. We're starting to sense this is a choice. We hit that last 2 weeks. I have a choice. And I'm going to choose, it's a nice day. Because this is the only one you have. You don't have that 50 years down the road day. Today. You get that? Really powerful stuff. If you want to be peaceful. So we started exploring last time how it is that we can move ourselves consciously into the present moment, using your definition. And we said the first thing we do is we what? Get out your notes if you've forgotten.
Stop.
We stop, meaning stop what? Yeah, the endless mind chatter that is focusing on what isn't happening now. We said, we had a big thing here that said, here's reality, and reality included here and now. Our experience. So we have the ability to stop that mind chatter about what we aren't experiencing. And that doesn't mean never think about those things. But if we notice ourselves getting the least bit anxious, the least bit fearful, the least bit angry, the least bit worried, this is the antidote. You go, okay, I'm not going to I don't have to think about those things. I'm going to think about something else. And so the second step is, what is it that we can immediately turn to that hones us in on here and now? What's the second thing? We stop and we look, meaning what? Yeah, noticing what you can notice. Oh. I mean, just for a second, just do that for a sec. For just a sec, put your pens down. I know we did this with our hand, but I want you to, I'm going to give you so many opportunities to do this, but just kind of turn off all of your senses except your hearing. Okay, just tune into your hearing for just a second. For like 15 seconds, go. Just listen. What do you hear? And go deeper. Now what do you hear? Now, how many of you can hear the racquetball? It's like, yes, I wish I were doing that. But until you went there, nobody, I'll bet, and maybe some of you did, but I'll bet none of you went, oh wait, racquetball, somebody's playing racquetball right now. Right? That's not a judgment. It's just where we put our attention. We can only focus on one thing, and when we start focusing on what's here and now, what's here and now expands. You hear some kind of motor. I don't know what that is, but it's some kind of a fan somewhere. It's not right here, but it's somewhere up there in that piping somewhere. You could hear people. You could hear people breathe. You could hear people walking. Even when it was quiet, suddenly it got loud. Right? Did you notice that? The noise that you didn't hear at all before suddenly got loud. Now, the reason why we did that is because if you can only focus on one thing consciously at a time, you can only have a dominant thought. You can have all kinds of subconscious and unconscious thoughts. But if you can only have one thought at a time and it is on something here and now, what is it, how do I say this? What can it not be on? Yeah, it's not going to go to your past or your future. And if your past or your future is filled with anger and fear, then you've effectively taken yourself away from that possible thought to here now. We did the thing with our hand, and we noticed all kinds of things that we'd never noticed before, right? We just, oh my gosh. I once read this book, really cool book. It was called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It was a big, thick book on philosophy. It was the coolest book. But it was written by a guy who was a college professor in Montana. And one of the things, he got really frustrated with how people would come to school, they'd come to his classes, and by the time the class was finished, even though he would give them all kinds of interesting information, nobody learned anything. They didn't learn. They just came to memorize so that they could throw it up on tests, never to be remembered. No learning happened. And so he said, I'm going to change this. I'm going to transform this. So one of the things that he did in his retooling his class was he had his students, and I'm not kidding, he had them go to a wall, like only it had bricks, and he had them stare at a brick. I know, like, well, that sounds really stupid. And he had them start describing, kind of like what we were doing with our hand. He had them describe what the brick was like, just start describing. And at first, they got really anxious. It's a brick. There's nothing there. It's just a brick, right? And then as soon as they started letting go of their preconceived notions of how everything is supposed to show up for them and just noticing, just stopping and looking, he said they couldn't stop writing all the things that they noticed, all the things that they observed. And that's the way it is with most things. When you look at a sunset, so let's continue with this. So we stop. We look. What's the... Do you remember the old saying, stop and smell the roses? Everyone's heard that term, right? Stop and smell the roses. Kind of, that's the idea behind mindfulness, but it misses. It only goes to the first 2 parts of these 4 steps. The third step of this, and we'll see how this develops, is we accept. So we remove judgment. We accept. So we don't try and write our own scripts of how things ought to be, how we think things should be. We just notice what we notice, and as we're noticing, we're okay with it. It kind of sounds like, this sounds like I'm noticing, and this sounds like I'm okay with it. Why? Why would we want to be okay with things 99% of the time? You're in rush hour traffic. You can't do anything about it 99% of the time. 1% you can. And when it is something you can do something about, you do something about it. But 99% of the time, you say, all right, it's a little cold today. My resisting it is not going to make it any better. As a matter of fact, my resisting it will make it worse. So we say, this is who's in my present moment, and I'm okay that I'm not going to try and not let them be in my moment, or I'm not going to try and have things be different than they are, because they're not. Now, can you feel what starts to happen what's the feeling that you're going to start to have if that's what you do with your present moments? If you put your attention on, wow, we have, okay, the thought that came to my mind was, we have about a ratio of about 50% blondes, 50% brunettes or dark hair, and a couple with no hair. Right? And I'm just observing that. And some people spent some time on their hair today, and other people didn't spend any time on their hair today. And I'm not judging any of that. I'm just noticing that. Okay? I don't go, man, why can't people take care of their hair? Geez, take a shower for once. You don't go there. If I just go, wow, how interesting that some people have hair that's not their original color for sure, but there's no judgment there. It's just noticing. How are you going to feel when that's how you're observing things? What are some of the immediate kind of interesting things that or feelings that will immediately percolate? So wait, don't answer it yet. Don't answer it. Let it ring. Let it ring. Oh, too late. So, no. So let's can we play with that for just a second? Okay. So, your body language for a second went, oh man, I shouldn't have done that, right? Now, if we were mindful, we would have gone, oh, I'm noticing that there's a ringing going on, and there's nothing I can do about that ringing. Now, you could do something about it. You could stop it. But the rest of us, we go, oh, that's ringing. No big deal. Instead of, gee, she knows the rules. Correct? Now, as you're that way, how does that feel? When you're, oh, that's ringing. I noticed that. Okay. That's what happened. That's what's happening right now. How do you feel? For sure, you don't have the stress response turning on, right? So you're in balance, homeostasis, there's no stress, and that all by itself is enough. And in a second, we'll get to the fourth, and this changes everything. But to that point, if you do this with each thing where the phone goes off, oh, no judgment, it's just a sound. You notice people have different colors of hair and different levels of washed hair and unwashed hair. And you, okay, that's what it is, no big deal. Can you imagine if everyone functioned that way? If everyone was, I'm okay with you however you are. Because you can't change, I can't change you. Can you imagine how peaceful we'd be? I mean, this isn't just an you and me kind of thing. This is, if we did this globally, it would in an instant create world peace. If everyone were just to this point, I'm okay with how things are. I'm going to focus on here and now because that's all I have. And in a second, I'll show you where this really takes off. Can you see what a difference this can make? It just blows my mind why we love being so angry and so afraid. And we could be peaceful, trusting that each moment will be kind of okay, because that's our experience is like Snoopy, each day seems to keep being okay, and then sometime we'll die.
So what if it's not okay then?
What do you mean, not okay?
So if everybody was like, we take judgment off and we're so free with everybody, but one of these people is like literally unsafe because they are not okay. Don't we have to kind of be, I mean, don't we have to be aware a little bit that some changes?
That's why I said 99%, not 100%, because there's people who do really bad things that we can't be okay with. If somebody came into my house while my family and I are asleep and he wanted to do bad things to my house or to me, I'm not going to go, oh, I'm noticing you're stealing my stuff. And I'm noticing that you're trying to hurt my wife. There's no way under the sun I would get my Louisville Slugger or my whatever gun that I happen to, and I wouldn't be okay with that. That's 1% of the time, or far, far less. And we obviously don't. The other 99% of our days don't have those things going on, though. That's the where I'd like to focus with that in mind, because I totally accept it. Totally. Yeah. I mean, if you go, I've traveled all over this country. I haven't been to too many others, but no matter where I go, it still feels like when I go outside on that day, when I lived in California for a couple of years, back east for a couple of years, Midwest for 3 years, 4 years back east. I still, when I go outside, it feels like this. Or when I'm in my days, it feels like this in most places, right? Most places. Not all, for sure. And I'll give you that. And you tend to get what you're focusing on. If your energy is angry and your energy is fearful, you will find that. Just like if you want, I don't know if this is still the case. When I was in college, they always told us, and I didn't ever do any, the closest I've ever done to drugs is NyQuil. I don't do drugs. I never did. The idea of smoking just makes no sense to me, having 200 degree Fahrenheit smoke going into my lungs doesn't make any sense. And I'm not having, if you smoke, fine, I don't care about you. But I care about you, but it's your call. It doesn't matter to me if you smoke. It's between you and your lungs. If you drink, it's between you and your liver. I don't care. Again, when I was in college, all of that was available. They always told us, if you want to find drugs, you can find drugs. And this, even at BYU, they said, if you want to find drugs, you can find drugs there. I don't know if that's still the case or not. I don't care. So what you're saying is exactly right. What you are, you're going to tend to, the kind of thoughts that you have is what you're going to kind of find out there. And if you have angry thoughts, you'll notice that your experience tends to be angry as well. If you're peaceful, your experience will tend to be peaceful as well. I say tend to. It doesn't mean one-to-one always. But I really, really, a long time ago said, I want to be peaceful as much as anything else. I want to be happy. I want to be peaceful. And I've tried to figure out what works to make myself peaceful and happy. And I find that wherever I go, things seem to be peaceful and happy. I don't find myself in situations where people are arguing or fighting. And maybe that's just a weird anomaly for me. I had to come up yesterday for a meeting. I came from my home, and I didn't want to, I was lazy. I didn't want to park in the parking lot where I usually park, so I parked over in the education building parking lot. And it was a 45-minute meeting, and I thought, I hope that I don't get a ticket. And I put out there, ticket.
You're bad.
You know, I put that out there and walk out to the car and a little green thing on my car. Now, that was the reality, right? I show up. I could have gotten really mad. Man, how am I going to, why did they do that? Or how could they do this to me? I pay enough to this school anyway, and I give enough, and now they're making me pay $16 to set my car in that little space. But I went, all right, okay. I did what happens when you get tickets. And I got to remain peaceful. That's the whole point of it, is I know that if I would have resisted it and said, no, this can't be happening, when it has already happened, then I would just be hurting myself. And I said, okay, I'll call it something besides a ticket. I'll say, I'm making a donation to the wonderful police group that takes care of us so well, and I'll write it off on my taxes or something. Do you know what I mean? As a donation. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. As long as that's how I think about it, I'm going to be peaceful and I'm going to be okay. And maybe if I went in there and I said, really sorry, I did this, they might waive it. Probably not. But if I went in going, you stupid idiot, why do you give me this ticket? They'll probably double it right there, won't they? You don't want that? Dang. How do you feel about $32? No, they wouldn't, but you get the idea. So, we stop and smell the roses. We stop, we look, we accept that the roses are our present moment reality. What would make this even better? What do you think? There's a fourth thing. How do you, okay, she said gratitude. How can you get to gratitude in every moment? We call it savor, which is all of these other things that you guys said. Now, I want you to watch what happens with this. This is where this becomes a game changer for us. And we'll try to pull out as many examples as possible to demonstrate this, because it's one of the coolest things I have ever learned in all of my life, the almost 6 decades of life, this one idea, this process right here is one of the biggest game changers I know of. When you're watching a sunset, we've all seen, we have some of the greatest sunsets in the world here. Not to say other sunsets aren't cool elsewhere. Hawaii has great sunsets. I have a few times, and I love Hawaiian sunsets. But we have great sunsets here, correct? So, notice how this works. When you're watching a sunset, you're not going, oh, okay, I've got a math test tomorrow. Oh, geez. You stop, and then you start looking at it, right? You start, oh, here's how these clouds are moving and are looking, and here's how the sun, and here's the colors. You tune into the visual part of it. And then you be okay with it. You don't judge, man, Mother Nature or God or whoever's in charge of sunsets could have done a better job than this. Come on. Hawaii has better sunsets than this. Come on. No, you just, okay, this is my sunset. Savoring, when you're in the savoring mode, what do? After, or in alignment, these aren't in an order. They all just kind of happen simultaneously. You soak it up. You go, oh my gosh, wow. And the word that it sounds like is wow. And here's the thing is, every one of us has had this a lot, where we do stop ourselves with whatever we're doing, with all of our, it's kind of like instead of being busy doing, we stop and just be. And it is in those moments of being that we capture the beautiful of whatever that is, whether it's a brick. Have you ever been in a conversation with somebody and you know that person's not there? You know what I'm talking about? That's one of the reasons why I hate cell phones on in my class. Because I know as soon as you're with whoever you're with on your phone, you stop being with me. And if you're in here, I want you with me. If you don't want to be with me, I don't care. But go somewhere else to not be with me. I figured that out about 2 years ago. That's why I hate cell phones on in my class, because you're not with me anymore. You've been with people when they're not with you. How does that feel? You're talking to them and you know they're somewhere else. How does that feel? Or wherever you're thinking elsewhere, I mean, you can see it in their eyes when they kind of go. And they're thinking about something that's an hour away or 100 or 50 miles away. However, if you go the opposite way and you are focused with somebody, have you ever had one of those conversations with somebody and you're certainly not doing any of this. You're totally focusing on what that person's saying, what that person's feeling. And then you just, man, this is cool that we're having this experience. How does that feel? You probably have all had those times where you start talking and the next thing you know, it's like the sun's coming up. Right? You just, man, we've been talking all night. Because you did this. And time kind of, your whole concept of time changes when you're here. The whole concept, time doesn't necessarily go faster or slower. Usually it goes a little faster. If it goes slower, you know you're resisting. But if it goes faster, it means you're in the moment. You're in the moment of now, and you're soaking it up. How many of you have ever held a baby in your arms? How many of you held your own baby in your arms? few of you, right? When you're holding that baby, is your mind chatter one of, it's going to be tough for you. Oh, man. It's going to be, you'll have a few good years, and then it's just going to be hard. It's better. When you're holding, is that where you go with your baby? Or somebody else's? My daughter's just had her first baby. Coolest thing ever. I sat there for an hour with it I was sitting with him in my lap. Yeah, sorry. And I just stared at this thing. I was totally absorbed, and I kept going, this is a kid that's only this tall. And he's breathing, and you can see his little heartbeat in his chest and his little soft spot and all of those things. And that moment was as great as the bike ride I took yesterday. And every moment in between when I get to here is the same great. Because I know that as soon as I get here, then whatever it is I'm focusing on in savoring expands. Like the sunset, or when you're focused on the baby, or when you're with somebody one-on-one and you're like, wow, it is so great to just be with you. Tell me more about what you're feeling. What are you thinking? All those kinds of things. Can you see how powerful this is? See how much better this is than you see people walking around campus. Right? And I want to say, look at this campus. I've been on a ton of campuses. This is one of the most beautiful campuses around. It's not the number one. But as soon as I say it's not the number one, that's a judgment. And I say, no, this is so cool that we have. And the mountains that are just right there, and the mostly clean air. But as you get rid of judgment and you just focus on it, and you tune into it a little more and a little more and a little more, then the beautiful of that becomes obvious. When just to look at you guys and go, man, all of you guys have had millions of cool or hard life experiences that would be so fun to hear. And all of you are different in so many, nobody's even remotely the same. And how cool it is that you just see where you can go with that? Instead of, oh, the Supreme Court guy, he's going to get 50 years of him on there. Oh, I don't know. He might have done something 38 years ago, and how could he possibly be worthy of this? Do you see which is better? Which is better for my inner peace? It's not a hard decision. Turn the TV off and watch what's happening in your here and now. We all get this because we're not far afield from it. We've all done this a lot. 2 quick stories I want to tell you that kind of honed this in for me. I remember I was with my family. We were at what's the resort that's right next to Disneyland? That's the fun one. What? Is that what it's called? California. Disneyland's great. It just has better rides, at least it did when we went on And they have this ride called California Screamin'. They did. Do they still have that? Oh, did they? But is it the same kind of, you start up and you go, and then it flips and twists and turns. And now, and we could use any roller coaster or any ride or even just going for a jog. it's still the same thing. Imagine how silly it would be if I were riding on this roller coaster, just having the time of my life, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I hope we get a parking place. Or, man, we're going to have to, I have 4 kids and none of them like to eat the same food. Where are we going to eat? If that's what I'm thinking about when I'm going on this roller coaster, what am I missing out on? The whole roller coaster. And that's a pity, because I paid to get on the roller coaster. I waited in a long stinking line to get on this roller coaster, and if I'm filling up my mind with thoughts of what's not happening here and now, why did those guys get in that argument? Man, my kids just can't get along. Then I'm missing out on the joy of the flying around on this roller coaster. Now, contrast that with, there was a guy, there's one gentleman who wrote, he's a Tibetan monk, and he's written several books on mindfulness. That's another guy. That's Eckhart Tolle, who wrote kind of the same kind of things. Wonderful writer. But this was Thich Nhat Hanh was this guy's name. And he said this. Now, he was writing this in relation to something incredibly mundane to you and me, incredibly boring to you and me. Listen to what he says. He says, to my mind, the idea that doing dishes, so he's talking about something you and I hate for sure, at least probably not on our top 50 things we'd like to be doing. And this was pre-dishwasher, or he wasn't talking about sticking stuff in a dishwasher. He was talking about cleaning dishes. Okay, so he says, to my mind, the idea that doing dishes is unpleasant can occur only when you aren't doing them while you're doing them. I enjoy taking my time with each dish, being fully aware of the dish, the water, and each movement of my hands. I know that if I hurry and go have a cup of tea, the time will be unpleasant and not worth living. That would be a pity, for each minute, each second of life is a miracle. Each bowl I wash, each poem I compose, each time I invite a bell to sound is a miracle. And each has exactly the same value. Now, get this next line is this is the essence of what we're after. He says, if I am incapable of washing dishes joyfully, and I would say parenthetically, or doing anything joyfully, if I want to finish them quickly so I can go and have a cup of tea, I will be equally incapable of drinking the tea joyfully. With the cup in my hands, I'll be thinking about what to do next, and the fragrance and the flavor of the tea, together with the pleasure of drinking it, will be lost. I will always be dragged into the future, never able to live in the present moment. Do you get that? Like I said, I've been around a while. And you guys have probably seen the same thing in your having been around on the planet as it's gone around the sun so many times. I see people who, this is how they function. Oh, I can't wait to get out of preschool, and now I'm going to be in, because when I get into elementary school, life will finally be good. Oh man, life is horrible in elementary school, but I know junior high will be better. Can't wait to get out of junior high. Give me high school, because I'm sure that's the best place. Holy cow, get me out of high school. College, that's where life really starts to happen, and I'll be better off in college. Or I just have to find Prince Charming or Princess Charming so that I can finally be happy with someone. Life won't really be great until I graduate. soon as I graduate, then things will finally be great for me, and I'll finally get to have happiness because I will have graduated from a college. I can't wait until we have kids, because life doesn't get great until you have kids. And then it's the kids that make your life so great. I can't wait till these kids leave. Because as soon as we retire, then we'll get to do all the things. Or I can't wait till he leaves or she leaves. Because I can't stand being with him or her. I need to be alone or somewhere else with somebody else. I can't wait until I retire. Then finally things will be happy for me. And then the obvious, how does that end? How does that particular scenario, when the person is alone and retired, you missed the whole life. You missed your whole stinking life because you thought the next thing was going to be better than this thing. But if you go to here, this thing every time suddenly becomes the best thing. But if you live in that, I know the next thing will be better, it never is. I can't tell you how many people I worked with who that has been their way of, you guys are young, mostly. And you have like 60, 80 years ahead of you. And you'll watch, as you live your life, you'll watch people who go through that whole thing. As soon as I graduate, then finally things will be great. And they get in a job and they go, man, I wish I'd have enjoyed college because this is horrible. But the antidote to that really is enjoy each moment with wherever you are and with whatever you're with. I remember yesterday, I went on a bike ride. And the way I know I talk about this a lot, but it's just kind of, that's one of my favorite things. And I was riding this one particular place, and I was going about, 15, 18 miles an hour through these trails, and the instant I take my mind off the trail, what's going to happen? I don't have time to go, I wonder what I'm going to eat tonight. Because I have to, and that's why, the reason why I like biking, I think, as much as anything, is because it forces me to do this. What do I see in front of me 15 feet or 15 yards? What's right here? What's now? What's here? And I can't start thinking of what happened yesterday or what's going to happen. And so many other things are like that. I've coached all of my kids in basketball and some baseball, and somebody asked me, why do you coach your kids? Why don't you just let somebody else coach them? And there's a bunch of reasons why, but the main reason is my kids got old really fast. And I missed out on so many things because I was so worried about, I've got to do all these things in the future, and I missed out on the moments with them. And this last son, we had 3 kids and then an accidental birth control doesn't work every time kind of child. And I thought, no matter what, I'm going to spend as much time as possible with him because I know he's not going to be around very long. Like my son is, who's in college now, he never wants to be around. He's always with some girl, or he's in Logan, going to school, and we see him maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks. And that time together passes. And I want to be with who I'm able to be with as fully as possible. I know that sounds like, you're just kind of soft and cheesy guy, but I want to be peaceful, I want to be happy, and I've noticed that when I do this, with wherever I am, that's what I get as a natural consequence. When I let go of judgment and just focus, then the fragrance of the rose. So instead of stop and smell the roses, it becomes stop and enjoy the smell of the rose. That's what it turns into. And every moment is capable of being enjoyed. It becomes more imprinted on you, those moments that are wonderful, so that you can hearken back to those. Now, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't for a moment say never remember things, kind of what you're saying, or never focus on the future. You for sure make plans. You for sure. We can't just, okay, I'm just going to float around and hope good things happen all the time and just keep my eyes, like you kind of mentioned, Jen, of the hippie who just, whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. But when you make a plan, right, you're moving a future moment into the present and applying control. We'll get into time management in a few weeks. Planning is a very present moment activity. But the moment you go into the future and you start getting worried, afraid, scared of something that's not happening now, then you go, oh, wait a second. Wow, this is cool. You get that? Do you get the difference? So I'm not saying don't ever think in the future or the past. You can't help it. But it keeps us out of that stress, which is almost 99% of the time is future past-oriented thinking. I think it would be an interesting study to look at people who tend to rush things compared to people who aren't quite in such a rush about things but still function normally, to see if they're grayer faster. See if they're aging more quickly because they're just in a hurry to get to the next thing. So your body kind of goes, all right, you want to get there faster? We'll get you there faster. This is what getting there faster looks like, age. Focus here. I want you to make sure you get this. You're going to go somewhere, and I don't care where it is, but you're going to be by yourself, and that means no cell phone also. So I don't want you to be going, okay, I'm doing this, and now because then you're not being mindful. You're being dualistic. You're being multitasking, and those two are diametrically opposite. Multitasking is not mindfulness. The two are totally opposite. So you're going to go wherever you're going to go. And again, I don't care where it is. And you don't have a mouth also. You have to be totally silent. And for an hour's time, you're just going to observe. You're going to do this over and over and over again. You're just going to start each moment with, what am I noticing? Senses, hearing, sight, taste. If you want to have some food with you, go ahead. What do I feel? If you're, some people they'll go to a park and they'll just kind of get in touch with the feel of the park. It doesn't matter what you do or where you do it as long as you're doing these 4 steps. And as you're doing it, you're going to write down on a piece of paper everything that you're noticing, everything that becomes apparent to your senses, and also the kind of the thoughts that you're having, the feelings that you're having. You write down, I'm noticing, and when I watch this, this is what I notice myself feeling. Here's some thoughts that I'm having. So it's all about showing up, going, no judgment, just noticing. All right? My last comment, and I know we're running out of time, but one person wrote me back and said, that's a cute assignment, and I'll get around to that. I'll try to be mindful sometime. down the road when I have some time to do it, like it was a relaxation exercise. She just didn't get it. And this is what I wrote back to her. I said, if you're ever to be at peace, this is this last paragraph on this page, if you are ever to be at peace, you must come to accept, even embrace what you see in front of you. And the only way to really see what is in front of you is to stop analyzing, stop judging, stop trying to figure everything out, and just look. Just stop and observe. To be fully present in this moment is to be at peace. To be out of this moment, thinking we're somewhere else, doing something else, is precisely why we feel stress on a continual basis. To say this is a silly exercise is to say life is silly. Look at your experience. There's never a time when it is not this moment, right here, right now. All of life is successive moments of the present. We can always choose what we want to see in this moment. To choose to be mindful instead of mindless is wisdom of the highest order. It is, in my mind, one of the grand keys, but it must be practiced. So practice for the rest of your life, because that's all you have, our moment.